Find the exact value of each expression in radians. If there is no value, write undefined. Cosine inverse of -2. Let's look at the domain of cosine inverse. Domain of cosine inverse and sine inverse, they got the same domain from -1 through 1. So cosine inverse and sine inverse are defined for the numbers in between -1 and 1. But -2 is outside of the domain. That means there is no angle whose cosine is -2. Okay, so this is undefined. Here sine inverse of 1. So basically we are trying to find the angle in radians whose sine is 1. So sine of which angle equals 1, and this is the range for sine inverse of something. The range is, that means the answer should be in between -π/2 and π/2. Okay, so we know that looking at the unit circle, sine of 90 degrees, sine π/2 is 1. So sine inverse of 1 is π/2, and that is included here in the range. Tangent inverse of -1. Tangent inverse is defined for any numbers, any real numbers, and the range is, the range for tangent inverse, that means the answer is almost like this, but we cannot include the endpoints. So this is the range. So the answer, or the angle, so we are basically looking for the angle whose tangent is -1. So tangent of which angle is -1. By the way, sine inverse and tangent inverse are odd functions. That means when we try to write down, when we have, let's say, tangent inverse of negative angle, we can just pull the negative outside. Negative of tangent inverse. Same thing for sine inverse. But there is no information about cosine inverse. So what we can do here is tangent inverse of -1, we can pull negative outside, being tangent inverse being an odd function. So that is tangent inverse of 1. Now we are looking for an angle in between -π/2 and π/2 whose value is 1. So tangent of which value is 1. Now we got rid of that negative part. Okay, so tangent of 45 degrees is 1. So -45. 45 means π/4. Sine inverse of √3/2. This value is less than 1, so this is good enough. Now looking at the unit circle, we need to find angle whose sine is √3/2. We know that sine of π/3 is √3/2. That means sine inverse of √3/2 is just π/3. Okay, this is π/3. Cosine inverse of cosine. In general, we can cancel cosine inverse and cosine if this angle is in the range of cosine inverse. Remember, I wrote I wrote for sine inverse and tangent inverse the range. I wrote just for sine inverse. The range is here. For cosine inverse, when we cancel the answer, the range, for this one, the range is from 0 through pi. If this angle 3π/4, if this angle is in between 0 and pi, then we can simply cancel the actions of cosine inverse and cosine. Then we have the answer. Let's see. Yes, 3π/4 is less than 1 pi, so we can simply cancel their actions, cosine inverse and cosine. So the answer is just 3 pi over 4. Here tangent inverse of tangent 3 pi over 4, kind of similar. Let's see what is the range of tangent inverse. Okay, tangent inverse range is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. If this angle happens to be in between here, then we can simply cancel. Otherwise, we need to write down the equivalent angle for tangent. 3 pi over 4, that's more than half pi, so it's outside. Okay, it's outside of this range, so unlike previous, this is not simply 3 pi over 4 now. Now we need to find tangent 3 pi over 4 equivalent value in first quadrant. 3 pi over 4 is in second quadrant, by the way. Now in second quadrant tangent is negative, so the angles pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, all of these angles have same tangent value, but plus minus depending on which quadrant they lie on. So tangent of 3 pi over 4, this is negative. Now we can simply write tangent first quadrant pi over 4, and to match it's going to be negative tangent inverse pi over 4. So tangent 3 pi over 4 has same value as negative tangent pi over 4. This is in first quadrant, this value is positive, but tangent 3 pi over 4 is negative, that's why we put negative sign there. So what we can do for this one, tangent inverse of negative tangent pi over 4. Now tangent inverse is an odd function, means this negative of this number we can put negative outside. So negative tangent inverse of tangent pi over 4. Now this pi over 4 is inside the range, that means inside the range of tangent inverse, that means we can cancel tangent inverse tangent, so negative outside pi over 4. Okay, in this case alternatively 3 pi over 4 is an standard angle, so we could have done slightly better, but this angle could be anything in second quadrant, not necessarily a standard angle. Then we have to go through this process. Here tangent inverse of tangent 3 pi over 4, we can find the value using the unit circle, that's negative 1. Now tangent inverse of negative 1 means we can pull negative outside, tangent inverse of 1. Now we are looking for an angle whose tangent is 1. We know that tangent pi over 4 is 1. Okay, so tangent of which angle is 1? So pretty much tangent pi over 4 is 1, so this one is pi over 4, and we would have the same answer.